From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Sylvia Sena here with your 12 p.m. news update. VPD has issued a bullying warning after surge of youth attacks. According to officials, videos are being posted online where teenagers gang up on another student before beating them to the ground and forcing them to kiss their attacker's shoes. Sergeant Steve Adson asked parents to talk to their children about bullying and also encourage the kids to call the police or ask for help from someone they trust. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, many BCIT students started to experience financial challenges due to their reduced income. With that in mind, the Student Association has partnered with the Greater Vancouver Food Bank, as well as with local communities organizations to provide free food assistance to students. The initiative has already helped almost 200 students, and the Student Association hopes to expand the project by the beginning of the next school year. And the City of Richmond is reviewing recommendations from staff for adjusting traffic safety measures in school zones. Richmond is hoping to make traffic precautions consistent citywide. And a traffic supervisor said their goal is to slow down traffic, but funding is needed first. And a group of UBC students has started a seed library at UBC for LGBTQ students and the community members. Reporter Gurpreet Campbell has more.
Out in the Dirt is a new queer seed library at UBC campus. It's a resource for LGBTQ students and allies to share seeds, tools, and other gardening resources. Here's Bailey Elizabeth, one of the organizers.
It can be really hard as like a queer person to feel like you belong anywhere, to feel like you have community, to create like a community of people who are queer, who are also interested in growing food. It's important to kind of connect ourselves to the food that we are eating and kind of create more like robust food systems.
The group is also planning on doing events off campus for those who aren't able to come to UBC. Gurpreet Kambo, 1680 The Crow.
And now Gurpreet is joining us live. Hello, Gurpreet. Tell us, what exactly does it mean for it to be Queer Seed Library?
Well, Sylvia, even in 2022, a lot of mainstream spaces are not LGBTQ friendly, or there isn't a guarantee that they will be. So the idea here is that Out in the Dirt is a safe space where queer folks can go and know for certain that they're welcome. This is a community specifically for LGBTQ folks and allies who want to grow their own food.
And how can people make use of the library?
So they have a physical space on UBC campus in the student nest. You can go there. They have a whole variety of seeds. You can donate your own too or take as you wish. They also lend out tools. And they go out into the community to do socials and workshops where you can learn more about growing your own food. So as previously mentioned, if people aren't able to head out to the campus, they are, heading out into the community where people are. Back to you, Sylvia.
Thank you, Gurpreet. And a union representing hotel workers in Burnaby said a year-long labor dispute has culminated in a tentative deal. Unite Here Local 40 said the agreement was reached after 2 days of mediation with the Hilton Vancouver Metrotown Hotel. Now a ratification vote is expected to be held today, and if approved, they begin the return to work process tomorrow, ending a long fight over wages. Hilton Metrotown representatives said they will not comment until a final settlement is made. And a type of material that mimics actual skin has been developed at UBC through the compounds used. The skin will conduct energy and connect to the nerves in those who need prosthetic. This will allow them to feel touch once again. Victor Goucher has the story.
A team of UBC engineers have developed a type of ionic skin that responds to touch and transfers energy just like real skin. Dr. John Madden says that this skin will aid the life of people who have nerve damage or prosthetic limbs.
Somebody walking across a carpet or be implanted in the shoe of a person who's lost feeling in their feet and could send even just signals up to their phone just to let them know if they have a rock in their shoe or, which could otherwise lead to a big injury.
Dr. Madden says his team is working to have this product available to the public within the next decade. Victor Gaucher, 1680, The Crow.
And if you want to know more about this story, tune in to For the Record at 12:20 here at 1680 The Crow. And the Federal Transport Minister Omar Al-Ghabra said Canada's Airport Security Agency is increasing their staffing because of the delays in airports. However, he said the lack of workers is not the only issue.
There's issue also of new travelers who have not traveled for very long. That takes taking out the laptop, taking out the fluids. All that adds 10 seconds here, 15 seconds there.
Many airports reported very long lines at airport security and border screening checkpoints, while some passengers are saying they are forced to wait for hours and sometimes even miss their flights. And a New York judge says he's about to release U.S. former President Donald Trump from a contempt finding. However, the decision will only be made if Trump meets certain conditions. Reporter Aaron Katersky from ABC News brings the details.
When former President Trump failed to properly comply with a subpoena from the New York Attorney General's office, Judge Arthur Engoron held him in contempt and fined him $10,000 a day. The total on that fine is now $110,000 if Trump pays it and submits all the required paperwork by next Friday. Engoron said he would purge the contempt order. Trump's attorney has said he has no documents covered by the subpoena, but the judge hadn't been convinced the former president even bothered to check. The subpoena was part of the Attorney General's civil investigation into how Trump valued his assets. Aaron Katersky, ABC News, New York.
And the federal government just announced millions of dollars in funding to improve access to safe abortions. Canada also enforced that the country's abortion laws are strong and unchanging. The $3.5 million will go to 2 organizations to help ensure everyone has equal access to abortion in Canada. And about the war in Ukraine, the head of United Nations believes there are no chances of a peace agreement or ceasefire at any time soon. Reporter Tom Rivers from ABC News has more.
Waxing on the subject of how this Ukrainian conflict ends, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres in Vienna.
This war will not last forever. There will be a moment in which the peace negotiations will be on the table.
But when might that happen?
It's not in the immediate horizon. But one thing I can tell you, we will never give up.
He said in the short term, the UN is focusing on evacuation efforts and delivering humanitarian aid to areas such as Mariupol. Tom Rivers, ABC News at the Foreign Desk.
And Al Jazeera is blaming Israel for the death of one of its well-known Palestinian reporter. Shirin Abu Akleh was shot and killed when she was covering an Israeli raid in the occupied West Bank early today. The Qatar-based broadcaster accused Israeli forces of deliberately targeting and killing their colleague. Israel military said they are investigating and suggest that the journalist may have been hit by the Palestinian gunfire. And this was your 12 p.m. news update. I'm Sylvia Sena, and you're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
This is sports on 1680 The Crow.
Hello, my name is Marcus Pelzer, and here are your sports headlines to 12:10. The BC Lions have signed 7 of their prospects from the 2022 CFL Draft. First-round pick defenseman lineman Nathan Cherry was selected with the 3rd overall pick in the draft. Cherry helped the Saskatchewan Huskies win both the Hardy Cup and the UTEC Bowl last season. Josh Archibald, selected 23rd overall, had 66 combined tackles for McGill in 28 games. The Montreal native has also won the Obek Trophy for being McGill's most improved player. Now time for some Canuck news. 2 Canucks have been selected to Sweden's World Championship roster. Defenseman Oliver Ekman-Larsson will be attending the tournament and will compete for Team Sweden. And Canucks unsigned prospect Linus Karlsson as well. While Linus Karlsson was acquired from the Sharks in 2019 in a 1-for-1 trade including Jonathan Dahlen. Karlsson also had a productive season in Sweden's top league, having 46 points in 52 games. Moritz Seider, Trevor Zegras, and Michael Bunting all headlined this year's Rookie of the Year award. Moritz Seider led all rookie defensemen in points and ice time as a 20-year-old. Trevor Zegras was tied for second in rookie goal scoring with Michael Bunting for 23. Least forward Michael Bunting led all rookies in scoring with 63 points. Other notable rookies were Lucas Raymond for the Detroit Red Wings and Anton Lundell with the Florida Panthers. Now time for your Stanley Cup playoffs update. The Penguins are looking to be the second team to advance to the second round. Penguins goaltender Louis Domingue has been good in DeSmith's and Jarry's absence. The Washington Capitals are hoping to bounce back against the Panthers after a tough 3-2 overtime loss in Game 4. Capitals head coach Peter Laviolette shares why the playoffs are so tough.
If you play in enough games, you realize that there's always outcomes. Some you're going to win, and some you're going to lose. Some are easier to put by, and some are tougher to get over. That's what makes playoff hockey so great. Is the intensity and inside of every game, and the investment inside of every game.
And now the Dallas Stars are looking to take a 3-2 series lead against the first seed in the Pacific, the Calgary Flames. Forward Tyler Seguin says they need to take the momentum back.
We've won a couple times in there this year, and it's a hostile environment. Momentum's huge in the series. We've had it, they've had it, and our time to respond.
Puck drop is at 6:30. Oilers defenseman Darnell Nurse will have a hearing for his headbutt against the Kings in Game 5 last night. Nurse has previously been suspended by the league for 3 games in 2016. There is a possibility that Nurse will be out for the rest of the series if the league decides to suspend him. The Boston Celtics are hoping to win 2 in a row tonight as they host Milwaukee tonight. Center Robert Williams is listed as questionable for the game. Celtics forward Jason Tatum is looking to replicate his Game 4 performance tonight. Meanwhile, with the Grizzlies, it was announced that John Morant suffered a bone bruise and will likely be out for the rest of the playoffs. The Grizzlies are on the brink of elimination, and the Warriors are seeking a Western Conference Finals berth. Assistant coach Mike Brown has high praise for Stephen Curry.
He got free on a pin down and knocked down a big 3 for us late. And then obviously, right place, right time in terms of the box out, gets fouled and goes to the free throw line and knocks 6, 8, whatever it is, free throws down in a row. So he'll always be there.
Now for your Blue Jays update. They are currently down 5-2 in the bottom of the 8th. The teams are tied for hits with 8 apiece. Jose Barrios had another rough outing, going 5 1/3 with 5 earned runs. For the Yankees, Gleyber Torres has 2 hits and 5 RBI. The Mariners are 2-8 in their last 10 and are 3 games back of the final wildcard spot. Their third and final game in the series starts in half an hour. Players to watch are Ty France. He is second on the team for batting average and leads the team in RBI. And Bryce Harper for the Phillies has 6 home runs and 19 RBI. Leila Fernandez has been eliminated from the Italian Open after losing to Daria Kasatkina in 3 sets. Meanwhile, Bianca Andreescu moved on to the round of 16 after her win against Nuria Perizas Diaz. She is now set for a match against Petra Martic. And Rafael Nadal beat John Isner, which sets up Shapovalov versus Nadal in the round of 16. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Marcus Pelzer, and you're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Hello, I'm your host, Victor Gaucher, on For the Record, and you're listening to 1680 The Crow. Today, my guest on The Crow is Dr. John Madden, a professor at UBC's Faculty of Applied Science in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. Dr. Madden first received his Bachelor's of Science from UBC, then completed his Master's in Biomedical Engineering at McGill, before finally finishing his PhD at MIT in the United States. Recently, Dr. Madden and his team have developed what they're calling ionic skin that feels and acts like actual skin. Dr. Madden, thank you for joining us today.
Delighted to be here.
So just off the top, what exactly is ionic skin?
It's quite simple, really. If you're used to eating Jell-O or foods with gelatin, it's very similar. In fact, that's one example of an ionic skin. In this case, what we have are some polymers. These could be made of proteins, or they could be synthetic polymers that are with water added and some salt. With the right chemical composition, they form a gel, which can be 90% water, somewhere between 30 and 90% water. And so this particular ionic skin, when you press on it, then will generate a voltage and a current.
And how does this compare to previous advancements? Because I'm sure there's been other types of fake skin made before.
Yes, so over the years, people have come up with ways of making what's called electronic skin, and then more recently, other forms of ionic skin. What people have done in the past is use rubbery materials or plastics, stiffer plastics, and used sensors that look at changes in resistance as you press on them or stretch the skin. They've looked at changes in capacitance. Then people moved to even softer materials than the elastomers, so they started to use hydrogels. And they used hydrogels as conductors because they contain salt. And so by applying a voltage, you could get a current of ions. And what's new in this case is that we have created a skin where we're actually generating a voltage when we press on it. And that's an effect we call piezoionic. This effect has been seen in cartilage and other biological tissue, but in a different way. And so what's unique about ours is, A, that we're making it into a sensor, and B, that it's a special situation where the polymer is not charged, and yet we're still generating a voltage.
Okay. So I guess that voltage is kind of the energy transfer, right? Is it like, I'm just trying to simplify this for someone who doesn't have a scientific background.
Yes. So when you put the mechanical energy in by squeezing the gel, so in fact this does work in Jell-O and gelatin, what happens is when you put your finger down or you put a spoon into Jell-O, you're actually pushing some of the water that's in between the polymer molecules, you're making it move. And when it moves, it carries salt with it. Salt, if you have salt in the gel. And the ions in the salt are charged. And if the positive ion, for example, moves faster than the negative ion through the gel, then you generate a voltage. You have charge being transported and you generate a voltage, and this is an example of converting, mechanical energy into electrical energy.
Okay, and so this, the reason this is so advanced is because this aids, whether it's someone with a prosthetic or what have you, it aids in their nerve feeling, their nerve receptors. Is that correct?
So there are a couple of things that are really exciting about it. One, you don't need any extra power. So imagine you have a prosthetic arm and you want to add skin to it so that it can feel touch on the fingertips or along the length of the arm. If you put this ionic skin on there, it will generate an electrical signal without you having to have a battery. So that's one thing.
Okay.
More importantly, we think, is that the signal that you generate can directly interface with the nervous system. So if you can get that signal to a nerve, so for example, if you had a prosthetic arm, you would take the gel and then bring a wire up to a nerve ending, maybe on the stump. Then if you can get it near a nerve, the currents that are generated and the voltages that are generated are just right to stimulate an impulse that will travel down the nerve. And so that, we think, there's still a lot of work that we need to do to really show this that can be widely applicable. But what we have shown is that the signal is just right, that it can then propagate a nervous signal that could go back to the brain, or as we've shown, can go and activate a muscle.
Wow. Okay. So why is there a need for ionic skin? Why is this worth the research?
Good question. And we haven't proven that there is going to be a need for it yet. So there's still more work that we need to do to prove that this is really valuable.
Okay.
But in general, as we know, if you've seen a prosthetic arm, if you've seen a robotic arm, you probably are aware that very, very few of them actually have many sensors that do the job of our skin. And that means that robots tend to have relatively poor dexterity. They can't do sophisticated activities like sewing, or they have trouble doing things like picking up an egg.
Okay.
Why? Because they just don't have as much sensor feedback. Now, there are special circumstances where they can do these things, but what we'd like to do is make it so that all robots, all machines could have this, and maybe it could even be used in situations where people have lost sensation. So there's still more work to be done to prove it, but that's a big part of the rationale for creating an ionic skin.
That is very interesting. If you're just tuning in now, I'm your host, Victor Gaucher, with my guest, Dr. John Madden, and you're listening to For the Record on 1680 The Crow. So, Dr. Madden, you mentioned that there's still a lot of work to be done in the research aspect and everything. What is kind of the process of developing a product like this, and where are you guys in the process, and what's left to do?
So there's some fairly simple things that we need to, fairly basic, I should say, not necessarily simple things. So first of all, this skin is mainly made of water. So that means that it evaporates. So we need to figure out how to encapsulate it. And we think we have a way of encapsulating it so it still feels skin-like and yet won't just evaporate away, leave a sort of salty mess behind. So that's one challenge. Another challenge is figuring out how we can best adapt it to the applications that we're interested in. So if we want to use it, for example, on a prosthetic arm, how do we get those electrical signals back up to the nerve endings that we're interested in? And one of the challenges is that the technology needed to stimulate nerves underneath this, there are good techniques for stimulating nerves from the surface of the skin. The problem is that they're not very spatially specific, so you can't take advantage very well of the large number of mechanoreceptors and nerve endings that are near the skin. The other option is to go under the skin and make more direct interface. The challenge there apart from the fact that most artificial devices use much higher voltages and lower amounts of charge, so there's a mismatch and a possibility of damage. The other problem is that A, the body doesn't like having foreign objects inserted, and B, there's a risk of infection through the path that you're taking to get under the skin. So we think that we have our material should solve the first problem, in that we have a material that's much more compatible mechanically as well as biologically than a hard metal object that would go into the skin. So that should give us an advantage, but we need to prove that. On the second one, how do you get through the skin without causing an issue? This is an area that remains a challenge, and there are people who solved it, but not in a. I don't believe that anybody's solved it in a really widespread manner where we know that it can be reliable.
Okay. And then is the ultimate goal to get this available to the public?
Yes, we'd like it to. Not just in this somewhat challenging application, which is to interface with the nervous system, but we're hoping that there might be other applications, for example, where something really low power can be and soft and safe can be used in, for example, really low cost, low power sensors that might detect somebody walking across a carpet or be implanted in the shoe of a person who's lost feeling in their feet, and could send even just signals up to their phone, just to let them know if they have a rock in their shoe, or which could otherwise lead to a big injury. So these are sort of other areas that we think might be a little easier to approach, and we have to show that our materials can then perform better than other sensors that are out there, which so far haven't been effective at meeting the requirements of these kinds of applications.
Wow. So you're trying to really kind of just benefit the overall quality of life for someone that has lost feeling in one way or another?
That would be great if we can do it. Again, it's not an easy problem.
Yeah.
But definitely like to if we can.
That'd be amazing. It sounds like it's pretty early in the process, but if you had to ballpark, when do you think this would be, or when would you like this to be available to the public?
I think it's, for this particular sensor, it's probably going to be about 10 years.
Okay.
We have some other sensors that we're working on that are more traditional in the sense that they're capacitive, they're rubbery, and they're really close to commercialization, we hope. So these ones are really exciting because they're so low in power, they're self-generating and so on. They can interface with the nervous system, but creating that effective interface or reading that signal, we still have to figure out how to do that effectively, because also the voltages here are quite small. We're talking about 1 to 10 millivolts, which is small compared to what you would get from a alkaline battery, for example, which is about 1.5 volts.
Okay. And I'm sure some people will want to know this. What do you expect the price of something like this to be?
Well, the materials themselves are extremely inexpensive. So basically, we're talking about, if you were to spread this out, we're talking about less than $10 a square meter.
Oh, okay.
So that's one of the beautiful things, and just about any gel material could be used. Obviously, something like gelatin is a bit brittle for making skin. I mean, we want it to be brittle because when we're chewing on it, we don't want it to be too tough. But there are lots of ways of modifying the gels to make them tougher, and some of them are extremely tough. It turns out that There are gels that you can stretch by 23 times their original length, and they still won't break. So, anyway, so that we're pretty excited about those properties.
That's awesome news. I'm sure many people will be happy to hear that it's not going to cost an arm and a leg to get an arm and a leg.
Yes.
Well, thank you for your time, Dr. Madden. Those are all the questions I had for you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me about this.
Well, it's been fun to talk to you, and all the best.
All right, thank you. I'm your host, Victor Gaucher, and this has been For the Record on 1680 The Crow.
The Mainland Misfits are lacing up their skates for another bone-crunching season of roller derby, a fast-paced, full-contact sport primarily played by women. Our reporter Gurpreet Kambo, who was given the derby name Purple Rain, that's rain spelled R-E-I-G-N, joins us from Surrey.
Powerful. I like the focus it brings. So I always found like games and competitions, it's like you enter into this you only have one thing to think about, and that's the game.
It teaches you how to fall down and get back up again repetitively, and then you can also apply
flamboyant, I think. There was a lot of color, a lot of screaming, a lot of yelling, a lot more face paint, stuff like that. It was just a fun time, and it was something I'd never seen before, and I just kind of got the bug.
We became friends through Derby and at Derby, and then slowly started hanging out outside of Derby, and now, I have a lifelong friend from it.
Blue wheels, pink toe stop, and then my toe covers are purple and my laces are purple.
For me, I really enjoy just being on skates, period. So I'll skate anytime, anywhere. And then also, it's probably one of the only times in my week where I'm not thinking about work or stressing. It's a very good way to sort of disconnect and just have fun.
Two lines of 4 roller skaters, pushing and pulling against each other, like a rugby scrum if you added wheels. This chaotic jumble of arms and roller skates is what each team's jammer has to break through to score points. This is the sport of roller derby.
Pronouns are she, they. I am Barbie, she, her.
Wrecking ball,
Hooligan, she, her.
Maddie Longlegs, she, her.
Sharky, she, her.
On Skip, he, him.
Party
of Nelson, he, him.
Trill, she, her. Kendra, she, her.
You're up.
What? Oh, so, right up front. Something that always is a problem.
They're lacing up at practice. We caught Frank the Tank as she was getting ready.
Okay, so I saw the movie Whip It like basically everybody else has. And then I was working at a hockey shop, and I didn't know there was a league nearby me. I thought the closest one was Vancouver, and at the time I couldn't really drive out to Vancouver to play. And when I was working at this hockey shop, this guy comes in and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to go play roller derby." I'm like, "Sorry, you're going to what?" And basically that night was what we used to call a punch and pie, which was like an intro to roller derby and the sport itself, and like kind of a recruitment night, and I was hooked.
The sport of roller derby is slowly making its comeback after the pandemic. The Greater Vancouver Roller Derby Association is practicing right now to get back into game shape.
Generally call what we're doing right now an edging drill. So you essentially have one person that's acting as the jammer and one person that's acting as the blocker. And one person, the jammer, is trying to push the blocker to a certain point, especially for the blocker to get good at really being down in their knees and kind of, with blocking you can't stay still, you have to still be moving a little bit. So that's the main. Try again,
Derby name Bruceberry Pie. I'm 5'6". I'm plus size. I have orange hair. I've got tattoos covering my whole left arm and pretty much both my legs. And also you can't see, but underneath as well. So when I first started derby, I would fall all the time because I was a really terrible skater. So I would fall and I bruised really easy. So I would be constantly covered in bruises. And so the name just came very naturally. Yeah. I really missed it during the pandemic. One, the physical contact, but also the emotional contact that you get to be around people. It was lovely. I didn't realize how much I missed it, I think, until it got taken away, or how much I needed it. Yeah.
We're gonna do the wrap around, which was the thing that Frank demonstrated. So we're gonna come around, do a full turn into holding them essentially. Cool?
I've been around the block, you could say. Yeah. And I've gotten to do like the whole, like I said, like the whole spectrum, right? So when I first started, it was like super casual, like fishnets, like just for fun, chugging beers at halftime, like that kind of a thing. And then I've gotten to do like, like all sorts of stuff. Like I was on Team Canada, I got to do that. I played with the men's league for a while as well. So all these dudes are all my teammates, like, and we get to play like super competitive. And then I also get to go to like, you go on trips. We go to Vegas every year and like just play for fun. It's super great. Like the whole rainbow. Okay, let's stretch. Hip flexors. So 1 foot down, 1 foot up, 1 leg up. Square that pelvis, tilt it back. Add the arm if you like.
We asked Barbie Brawl how she felt after practice.
Warm, sweaty, stinky, but really good. I always feel great, whether I had a bad day or a good day, whether I wanted to come to practice or not. I always leave practice feeling happy that I came. Like, we're still pushing yourself really hard, but because you're on skates, I don't know, it feels, it's like you trick your brain into thinking you're not doing hard work because you're not running. It's like every single sport you have to run on your feet, and it's exhausting. I'm still exhausted, but it's easier to push myself when I'm on skates for some reason. Roller derby, it does so much for me. It makes me feel very confident, gives me a physical outlet.
Slippery.
You're being very noisy, sir.
It feels slippery to me today. It's real slippery, right? I didn't know how to stop before, and I was like,
Made of nowhere, just recording sounds.
yeah, I'm just making sounds for them. There you go. You made some noise.
I look forward to it because it's also a social thing for me as well.
Really?
Lots of my friends, including one of my dear friends, my best friend over here, Frank. She is what I would call my derby wife. So a lot of times you meet someone in derby, it's not uncommon that you become really good friends with, or best friends in our case, and you would, give them the title of your derby wife. And a lot of times there's a proposal involved. It's a bit of a silly tradition with derby.
So
we're a little bit theatrical in this sport.
So then I have to ask then, Frank, Barbie considers you her derby wife. Is the feeling mutual?
Yes, the feeling is very mutual. I did propose to her one night. Yes. We're actually getting matching tattoos this weekend as well, so it better be mutual. We're getting SpongeBob and Patrick tattoos. And they're sticking their butts out.
From punk rock roots, the sport's getting a little more organized and official.
It's taken a lot more seriously now, like it's developed competitively, whereas before it was a little more grassroots, a little more DIY, so it was like more about like the outfits, and it was a lot of like skating fast in circles and less like aggressive contact. So you can be involved in it however as much as you like. So if you want to go super competitive and you want to like play in the World Cup and you want to represent your country, you can do that, or you can just do it kind of like at a rec league level, like in your hometown, and it's available for all different people. So whatever commitment level you have.
I just want to say to anyone that thinks that they have told themselves that they would love to try something like that, but they can't because they could never find the confidence or whatever it is, they don't think they'd have the skill. I just think it's one of those things that you need to just throw caution to the wind and fucking do it, because honestly, you'll never look back.
No reporters were harmed in the making of the story. For Purple Rain, I'm Yusuf hammer-smashed-faced Habib in Surrey for 1680 The Crow.
Hi, I'm Mally Hartwick, and I work at St. Paul's in Vancouver, and I'm an emergency nurse. So I've been a nurse for 30 years. I qualified in 92, and 6 months after my qualification, I went into emergency medicine. It's my passion. It's my love. I love not knowing what's coming through the door. I love saving people's lives. I love being at the beginning of their lives, at the end of their lives, in the middle of their lives, at the most stressful, most challenging times of their lives. When I started in emergency, I never thought I wanted to go any further. I was always a bedside nurse, always wanted to have my hands on patients. And then it got to the point where I felt like I'd seen everything, done everything, and it was getting boring. So I decided to go into a charge position. And it's more like you're the puppet master. So you're dictating the flow of the department. You're putting people where they have their expertise in their proper places. You're watching the junior nurses grow. You're helping mentor them. And just having more of an overhead view of things. I got to the point where I could look at people and tell you how sick each person was and triage them accordingly. And it was just getting boring. So I went into a charge nurse position, and I've been there for 10 years. And COVID hit, and violence became more of an issue, especially being in Vancouver with crystal meth. And I just had enough with the abuse, with the nastiness, with not being able to support my team properly enough. And that's more difficult because the junior nurses they're a lot more sheltered than the older nurses. I know when I went in, I wasn't very sheltered, and I wanted to get in there. And the more junior nurses are, the different generations, and they aren't as open to things. I don't know why they come into nursing. They're like, oh, I don't want to do nights, and oh, I don't want to do weekends. But it is a 24/7 job, and you need to get in there and get dirty, and everybody's coping skills are different, and some people can cope with suicide and birth and trauma, and other people can't. And that's the love of emergency medicine. I feel I thrive in that I don't know, what's going on, and I love it. It's not just the trauma and the accidents and the amputations, the traumatic amputations. It's, getting down into the nitty-gritty. I don't want to know your whole life story. I want to know what's happening now and figure out how to fix it now, and then on your way. Which is kind of a blunt way to look at it, but that's my passion. That's my love. Okay, as an emergency nurse from St. Paul's Hospital, don't think we haven't seen what you've done. Don't take life so seriously. I'm Mally Hartwick.
It's an activity that has made quite a racket, literally. Perhaps you've seen it in tennis courts at your local park, or some other courts that seem built just for it. The back and forth of a ball hitting the ground, the unmistakable clash of a racket hitting the ball, the laughter of competitors playing against each other. Pickleball is a sport that has recently exploded in popularity, with associations popping up across the Lower Mainland and membership within clubs booming. Even if you don't know any club members, you may have a family member or friend who has been swept into playing casually. We wanted to hear from some members about why they joined the craze.
Tom Westendorf is the marketing and sponsorship coordinator for the club, having joined on in 2019 just before the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. He first became acquainted with the sport around 2013.
My name is Tom Westendorf, and I'm responsible for sponsorship, donations, and marketing for the club. My wife actually started first about 6 years ago, and when I first heard the name, I thought, kind of a weird name for a sport, and sort of probably made a little fun of her for the first little while until I started playing. For me, it was about 4 to 5 years ago. I mean, it's really good exercise. The good thing is that it can be played by just about anybody. So this winter, with COVID and that sort of thing, I felt that this would be a good opportunity for me to get myself engaged with the club more seriously. So I think it's still in its infancy. I think it's picking up speed, if anything. Now this might sound silly, but I would not be very surprised to see this sport be competed, at a maybe even Olympic level someday. It's a great sport. It keeps you active. You get to meet a lot of people.
Kemi Dong is a retiree and has been a part of the club since last year. However, she will enjoy her first full season of pickleball this spring, and she is very excited.
Was playing tennis, and I used to go take a lesson every day. But then it was so boring because I couldn't find any players to play. So it was really frustrating, and then I look at this pickleball. So I was kind of struggling first, and then people were so helpful. So then I just started loving it. So I do that like every day to learn something different. It's like a full-time job for me now. Yeah. I'm here to play pickleball. I told my family, if the dinner is not ready, that means you can find me in pickleball courts. I retired, so I really needed a hobby. I always like sports. I've been doing hiking and, taking tennis lessons, whatever. But the pickleball I found is I found this passion. It's because I wish I found this pickleball like maybe 10 years ago.
In our meeting with Kemi, we soon discovered something incredible. She urged us to meet with someone who had become a sort of legend within the club.
If you're here, there's a 98 years old guy who's going to be here in a few minutes. And he plays pickleball. And he teaches pickleball. And he always wins the pickleball game.
No way.
He's going to be here, I told him.
Meet Stan Fryer. At 96 years old, he can still play the game, and then some.
I'm just turning 96.
Having seen so much happen to the sport over a short period of time, Stan was hopeful for what heights pickleball could reach in the coming years.
I think it'll wind up in the Olympics.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
I really do.
Yeah.
It's probably the fastest growing sport, certainly in North America, than any other sport has ever grown.
Yeah.
They're putting, I think, 12 new courts in Vancouver, and courts are springing up everywhere. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful part of this sport. People can play it right up till, I'm sure, over 100 if they wanted to.
There were points where we actually paused our interview to observe the sport.
See, they're all moving up to the...
Yeah, they're moving up there in that far game. Yeah.
And you make a lot of good friends. A lot of good friends. Well, I started out playing in the church first, and we had a club there, and that was going for... that's been going for the 20 years in the church. The club out here didn't get started till probably 5 or 6 years later. A lot of these people I've taught, so that's how they all know me. I think I've taught at least probably 1,500 people.
Really?
Yeah, over the 20-year period, 18-year period. I think that's what some people play a game of just body. I try to play a head game.
From talking to these three players, it's clear that pickleball is more than just a sport to them. To Tom, it's part of his job to coordinate the club's development as word spreads in the community. It gets him more involved with the sport.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon. I'm Seamus Page with your 1 p.m. news and sports update. A ratification vote is underway on a proposed contract that could end a year-long dispute between employees and the Hilton Metrotown Hotel. The union says that the return to work could begin as early as tomorrow if the proposals are approved. While the hotel has said that this has been a strike, the employees maintain that they have been locked out since April after about 100 staff contracts were terminated. The Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations is calling on the Vancouver Police Department to further investigate the death of 24-year-old Chelsea Poorman. Poorman's remains were found in a vacant house in Vancouver nearly 2 years after she was reported missing. The Federation says that Poorman's family deserves to know what happened to her before she was found by contractors in April. The police have launched an investigation into Poorman's death and have met with some of her family as well. Investigators currently believe she died on the property the night she disappeared. A hydrologist at the River Forecast Center, Jonathan Boyd, is concerned about the risk of flooding in BC after reports of a higher snowpack. The latest survey shows that the snowpack is 13% higher than normal, and Boyd believes that it could actually increase more in the time coming. A higher snowpack could mean a higher risk of flooding if sudden warm weather were to hit the province. The Liberal government has revised its draft of BC 71. The purpose of the bill is to ensure that gun buyers have a valid firearm license. The bill would also require vendors to keep records of non-restricted firearm transactions. Public Safety Minister Mark Mendicino emphasized why the bill is important.
The utility of allowing police to approach businesses to get access to information, to trace illegal gun sales or possession is essential. It was the way in which police were able to find and locate Marc Le Pen, and it is one of the main rationales that continues to inform why it is that we have implemented these new regulations under Bill C-71.
Hyundai is recalling thousands of U.S. vehicles due to leaky hoses in the engine compartment, risking fires. Rita Foley has more.
The problem is fuel hoses can leak in the engine compartment and cause fires. The recall covers some 2013 and 2014 Sonata sedans, many of which were recalled for the same problem in 2020. In that recall, dealers inspected the hoses and replaced them if they were damaged. If not, heat-resistant tape was installed. This time, all the faulty hoses will be replaced. Hyundai says there are no confirmed crashes, fires, or injuries, but it does have 138 reports of problems. This comes after the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration stepped up a series of investigations into engine compartment fires that have plagued Hyundai and Kia. I'm Rita Foley.
Sri Lanka's president is set to appoint a new prime minister, empower the parliament, and abolish the executive presidential system. The purpose of this would be to stabilize Sri Lanka, which has been immersed in an economic crisis that has led to violence and political unrest. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has said that he condemns the attack on protesters in support of his brother, the former prime minister who resigned yesterday. These protests were due to an economic crisis that has nearly bankrupted the country. A Russian official installed in the Ukrainian city of Kherson has stated the desire to annex another area of Ukraine into Russia. Charles de Ledesma has more.
The talk of annexation in Kherson and Russia's apparent willingness to consider such a request has raised the possibility that the Kremlin will seek to break off another piece of Ukraine. Russia annexed Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula in 2014. Now the deputy head of the Kherson Regional Administration installed by Moscow says the city is Russia, adding he wants Vladimir Putin to make it a proper region of Russia. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
The Vancouver Whitecaps will be hosting Valour FC tonight for the first round of the Canadian Championship. The Whitecaps welcome the CPL team for the first round of the championship, the winner of which will then go on to the CONCACAF Champions League. For today's weather, it is currently 11 degrees and mostly cloudy, and it is expected to be a high of 15 today with a low of 8, and a chance of showers tonight. This has been your 1 p.m. news and sports update. I'm Seamus Page with 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.